Welcome back to the channel. As you can probably tell by the title, today we're going to take a look at what's in my camera bag for 2023. But before we do, I just wanted to let everyone know I don't have a dozen camera bags. I don't even have 2 camera bags. I just carry this one right here. So what that means is my camera bag and what I pack in it changes based on my shoots. But there are certain things I carry with me regardless. So that being said, today I'm going to cover the essentials that always stay with me and we'll take a look at it. So let's just get into it. I feel like this doesn't need to be said, but the first thing I'm packing in my bag and bringing with me everywhere I go in 2023 is my camera. For me, it's my Sony a7 III, and it's what I'm actually recording on right now. This thing is like my baby. It's not the best on the market, it's not the worst on the market by any means, and it does everything I need it to do, so I have no intentions on switching it out just yet. Yes, there's better autofocus, there's all kinds of other features that do improve this camera, but right now I'm content with what I have, and this is what I'll always be packing with me. I shoot all of my photos and videos with this camera, so I never leave home without it. It's a full frame 24 megapixel camera. It's capable of 4K at 30 frames per second, or at 1080p, it's capable of 120 frames per second. It's a workhorse of a camera. It does 99% of what I need it to do, and my real only complaint is this flippy screen. This half flip can be really annoying when you're either trying to vlog or when you're trying to take really low to the ground photos and you have no way to actually articulate the screen upwards so you can see your framing and your composition before you take the shot. But other than that, I do love this camera and it's coming with me all the way through 2023. Now the lens that I pair this camera with probably 70% of the time, if not more, is the Zeiss 24 to 70mm. I love this focal range because at 24 I can take super wide landscape shots. I can also vlog with it no problem. It has the ability to reach that 50mm that everyone absolutely loves, whether you want to shoot landscape, portrait, automotive, whatever it may be. 50mm is like the gold standard of single focal lengths if I had to pick one. I can also get a bit of zoom at 70mm, which lets me get a bit of compression, whether it's into portraits or my car photography, or even starting to try to isolate a lot of landscapes. 70mm is also a really useful focal length. This lens isn't too heavy, so it's really nice to carry around. That might be mainly due to the fact that I'm using the f4 version. I know, it's not f2.8, don't shoot me. But the reality is the f2.8 is just a lot more expensive, and truthfully, it's not really about the weight. I didn't pick the f4 because it's a lighter than the f2.8. I chose it because at the price point at the time I was buying the lens, this is what worked for me, and it's done just fine. The next thing that's always in my camera bag is my 70 to 200mm lens. This is actually probably my favorite lens for a number of reasons. It handles wildlife and automotive shots perfectly, and it lets me really isolate landscapes so I can zoom in on just that one branch, that one tree, one peak of a mountain, or whatever else I may need to isolate. It also works amazing for cars and even portraits on the lower end. The other thing it allows me to do that the 24 to 70 does not allow me to achieve is wildlife. I find that with 24 to 70, yes, I could use it for wildlife, but being able to reach that 200 is really only the beginning of wildlife, but it's good enough for the type of wildlife photos that I shoot. How many times did I say wildlife? Anyways, you get the point. Between 24 to 70 and 70 to 200, I have all the focal ranges I really need covered. And if I had to throw in one more lens that I don't have or would add to this camera bag, it'd probably be something like a 16 to 24, just so I could get that even wider approach that I currently lack. But there is something that does make up for that in my camera bag, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. The next thing that's always in my camera bag is my drone. This is the Mini 2, and it's so light, so portable. It can literally do everything and anything you might want it to do, and because of that, I can't not include it. It allows me to get shots I would never even imagine, and it also allows me to scope out certain hikes before even having to go there. Sometimes I'm not sure if that 8-kilometer trail is going to get me to where I'm trying to go, so I can be lazy and just fly my drone to take a look at where we're headed next, as long as there's a clearing and an opening. Now I do have to say the controller and the batteries are significantly heavier than the actual drone itself, and they take up a lot more space in the bag than just the drone. So you do have to account for all 3 of those fitting, but at the end of the day, they really don't take up much space in my bag at all. Now the reason why I use this drone as opposed to an Air 2S or one of the larger drones is because where I live, the drone laws are just so strict that a sub 250 gram drone just makes all the flying so much easier. It allows me to use it in a lot more places, and I am cognizant of all the rules, but obviously this does provide me with the most flexibility possible, even when traveling. So if you remember earlier, I talked about that wider range and the fact that that would be the one lens I would add if I could. That being said, I do technically have something that covers it, and that's this little guy right here. This is the GoPro Hero 9, but you could be using a Hero 10, 11, or whatever else is out by the time you're watching this video. The point is, it has a super wide angle. It allows me to get any photos in circumstances where my camera wouldn't let me. For example, if I go underwater, this is the camera to use because it just lets me do what I need to do without being worried about damaging my camera. As a matter of fact, if I even get really close to water, I probably prefer to use the GoPro yet again. And if you're no stranger to this channel and you've checked out a ton of my other videos, then you've probably realized this is what most of those videos are shot on. Any of the behind the scenes, any of the ones where you get to see what I'm exploring, what I'm doing, how I got the shot and how the shot turned out, those are all filmed from this little guy right here, strapped to a chest mount and allowing you to get the feel of what it's like to walk through and take the shots I take. I think it goes without saying that this takes up almost no space at all, and therefore I carry this with me everywhere I go, even sometimes in my pocket. Now, some of you might think this one's boring, but I also carry these with me everywhere I go. Without these, half of my shots would be covered in dust, water spray, or God knows what else would be on there too. I will say that something like a microfiber is mostly used for smudges to get those off the lens or off my screen at the back so I can see what I'm doing. Whereas something like this pen, yes, I used to use a Nikon and this is a Nikon pen, allows me to kind of brush what I need to brush off of the camera or maybe out of the cracks, but that usually doesn't work. And it also has this other side. When you remove the cap, it has this curved microfiber feature. And what that allows me to do is actually wipe down the lens while tailoring or contouring around the curve. And then there's this dust blaster. And if you've been around on YouTube, if you've been following any photography for a while, you've probably seen these everywhere. These are just great because they get dust out of cracks, which realistically the brush and the microfiber don't do, but they also push the dust away without you having to worry about scratching the lens or creating these small little lines when you're rubbing around dust or whatever else is on the lens. So this is probably my favorite, but I definitely use the other two just as much, so they all come with me, and again, light and don't take up much space. It's also always important to make sure you can actually store all of your photos and videos, and that's why I carry a ton of these. Yes, it's a memory card. Yes, you're going to carry it. It doesn't take up much space. It's light, and that's why it's a no-brainer. It also helps me out in the situations where I forget my SD card plugged into my computer, show up on site like I'm sure a lot of photographers have done, and then gotten the no memory card error when you turned your camera on. Having these in my bag is like a safety net for me who forgets everything, but also really, really important for when it does get full and I have the ability to switch and continue shooting. And last but not least is my actual camera bag. This camera bag is probably the best camera bag I've ever owned. And the camera bag is called the, bear with me, Low Pro Protactic BP 450 AW2. You may have to slow that down or rewind that part. But this camera bag, although the name is tricky, is absolutely amazing. Fits as a beautiful carry-on. It's nice on the back, not too big. It has a harder exterior where it needs to, and the inside is actually quite nice and contains some foam. So overall, this thing is amazing, and I'm sure you saw on the thumbnail what the inside of this bag looks like, so I won't get into too much detail, but that's what's in my camera bag for 2023. If you found this video helpful or liked it, please consider liking this video or subscribing. It really helps me out, it helps out the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.